In a moonlit grove, a man falls dead, a knife in his heart, but no blade is found. Was it the curse of Astarte's temple or a killer's cunning? Can Miss Marple unravel the shadows of a fateful night? Listen as secrets unfold. Chapter 1. The Tuesday Night Club convenes.
Chapter 2. The Goddess's Grove. The fire in Miss Marple's drawing room seemed to dim as Dr. Pender's voice carried the Tuesday night club away from the cozy confines of St. Mary Mead to the wild, wind-swept hills of Devon. His tale, begun in the warmth of their gathering, now transported them to a night thick with the scent of summer blooms and the unsettling weight of an ancient grove. The listeners, Raymond West, Joyce Lempriere, Sir Henry Clithering, Dolly Bantry, and Miss Marple herself, sat rapt, their teacups forgotten, as Dr. Pender painted a scene both vibrant and foreboding. "It was a night unlike any other," Dr. Pender began, his voice steady but tinged with the echo of old unease. Sir Richard Haydon's estate, perched on a rise overlooking the moors, was a vision of elegance. The manor itself was a grand affair, tall windows, ivy-clad walls, and a ballroom that gleamed with crystal chandeliers. But it was the grounds that held the true mystery, and at their heart lay the grove of Astarte, a place that seemed to belong to another time. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly around his leather notebook. The grove was hidden beyond the formal gardens, past the manicured hedges and the marble fountain where water nymphs seemed to watch us with unblinking eyes. A narrow path, overgrown with brambles, led to it, and as we approached that night, I felt a chill that had little to do with the summer breeze. The yew trees stood like sentinels, their branches interwoven to form a canopy that blotted out the stars. In the center was the summer house, or temple, as Sir Richard called it, a squat structure of gray stone, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to writhe in the lantern light. Joyce Lempriere, her artist's imagination alight, interrupted with a shiver. "It sounds positively pagan, Dr. Pender. Were those symbols truly ancient, or was it all part of Sir Richard's flair for the dramatic?" Dr. Pender's lips twitched in a faint smile. "A fair question, Miss Lempriere. Sir Richard was a showman, no doubt, but the carvings were old, older than the manor, older than the village below. He'd had scholars examine them, and they spoke of Phoenician influences, of rituals to a goddess who demanded both adoration and fear. Astarte, they said, was no mere myth to those who built that place. But to us, that night, it was simply a stage for Diana Ashley's performance." Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked softly, a counterpoint to the rising tension. "Diana Ashley," she murmured, her voice gentle but probing. "You mentioned her beauty, her charm, but what of her character, Dr. Pender? Was she a woman to inspire devotion or discord?" Dr. Pender's eyes clouded, as if sifting through memories he'd rather forget. "She was both, Miss Marple. Diana was a flame, drawing all to her, yet dangerous to those who came too close. At the costume ball, she was the undisputed queen. Her gown, a cascade of crimson silk embroidered with golden threads, clung to her like a second skin. Her headdress, adorned with silver stars, caught the light as she moved, and her laughter was a melody that turned heads. But beneath the radiance, there was something calculated, a sharpness in her gaze that suggested she knew precisely the effect she wielded." Raymond West, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a woman who enjoyed her power. Did she play the goddess even before the grove?" "Indeed," Dr. Pender replied. "The alley was in full swing, music spilling from the ballroom, couples twirling in their costumes. I recall a young man dressed as a Roman centurion, his sword clanking as he tried to impress Diana with a clumsy bow. She laughed, not unkindly, but with a spark that left him flustered. Sir Richard, dressed as a Renaissance prince in velvet and lace, never strayed far from her side, but his cousin Elliot was another matter." Sir Henry Clithering leaned forward, his detective's instincts piqued. "This cousin, Elliot, you mentioned a rivalry. Was it evident that night, before the tragedy?" Dr. Pender nodded gravely. "Oh, yes. Elliot Haydon was a stark contrast to his cousin. Where Sir Richard was all charm and ease, Elliot was a storm cloud. Tall, lean, with dark eyes that seemed to burn with unspoken thoughts. He came to the ball dressed as a highwayman, with a black mask and a cloak that billowed like a shadow. He watched Diana with an intensity that made the air crackle, and when she danced with Sir Richard, Elliot's hands clenched at his sides. I overheard a guest, a woman in a peacock-feathered mask, whisper that Elliot had once proposed to Diana, only to be rebuffed. Sir Richard, it seemed, was the favored suitor." Dolly Bantry gasped, her hands fluttering. "A spurned lover. Oh, Dr. Pender, you're spinning a tale straight out of a novel. Did they quarrel openly?" "Not openly, but the tension was there, like a taut wire waiting to snap. I saw them exchange words near the refreshment table, their voices low but sharp. Elliot said something about playing with fire, and Sir Richard laughed, a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Diana, for her part, seemed to revel in their attention, flitting between them with a smile that promised everything and nothing. It was she who suggested the midnight jaunt to the Grove, a proposal that sent a ripple of excitement through the guests. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Dr. Pender continued, his voice dropping to a hushed cadence. "We were a merry band at first, perhaps a dozen of us, fueled by champagne and the thrill of the forbidden. Diana led the way, her crimson gown glowing in the lantern light like a beacon. Sir Richard walked beside her, his arm brushing her, while Elliot trailed behind, his cloak blending with the shadows. I followed, my monk's robes cotchal on the brambles, and behind me came the others, a Cleopatra with a gilded asp, a pirate with a jeweled eye patch, a medieval knight whose armor clinked with every step." He paused, his gaze distant. The grove was even more unsettling by night. The yews seemed to lean inward, their branches whispering secrets in the wind. The summer house loomed ahead, its cold and unyielding walls. Diana stepped into the clearing, her headdress glinting as she raised her arms. "Tonight," she declared, her voice ringing with theatrical fervor, "we honor Astarte, goddess of love and war. Let us offer her a dance, a song, a moment of worship." It was play acting, of course, but there was something in her tone, a conviction that made the hairs on my neck rise. Joyce Lempriere leaned forward, her eyes wide. Was it a ritual? Did she chant or summon something? Dr. Pender shook his head. Not a ritual in the true sense, but a performance. She began to move, her gown swirling as she spun in the moonlight. The guests clapped. Some laughed. Others joined in, forming a loose circle around her. Sir Richard stood closest, his face alight with admiration. But Elliot hung back, his eyes fixed on Diana with a look I couldn't decipher. Anger, longing, or something darker. The air grew heavy, as if the grove itself was watching, judging. Miss Marple's knitting needles paused, her voice soft but incisive. "And the other guests, Dr. Pender, were they all so enchanted, or did any seem uneasy?" Dr. Pender considered this, his brow furrowing. "Most were caught up in the moment, but I noticed one woman, a quiet guest, dressed as a shepherdess, with a crook adorned with ribbons. She stood apart, her face pale, as if she sensed something amiss. I later learned her name was Clara Vane, a friend of Diana's from London. She kept glancing at the summer house, as if expecting something to emerge from its shadows." Sir Henry nodded thoughtfully. "A perceptive detail. Did this Clara say anything?" Not then, but her unease was contagious. I found myself watching the shadows, half expecting to see the goddess herself step forth. Diana's performance grew more intense. She began to chant, words I didn't understand, perhaps nonsense meant to mimic ancient rites. The guests fell silent, mesmerized. Sir Richard stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to join her dance. And then, Dr. Pender's voice faltered, his hands trembling slightly. It happened so quickly. Sir Richard froze, his hand clutching his chest. His face twisted in pain, and he staggered forward, collapsing at Diana's feet. The lantern swayed, casting wild shadows, and Diana's chant broke into a scream. We rushed to him, but he lay still, his velvet costume dark with blood. The grove seemed to close in around us. The yews whispered.
Chapter 3. The Impossible Murder. The fire in Miss Marple's drawing room flickered, casting restless shadows across the faces of the Tuesday night club. The cozy warmth of St. Mary Mead felt a world away from the chilling scene Dr. Pender had just described. A moonlit grove, a goddess's dance, and the sudden, inexplicable collapse of Sir Richard Haydon, his lifeblood staining the earth. The listeners, Raymond West, Joyce Lempriere, Sir Henry Clithering, Dolly Bantry, and Miss Marple, sat in a hush, the weight of the mystery pressing upon them. Dr. Pender's voice, steady yet tinged with lingering dread, resumed, drawing them back to that fateful night in Devon. "The moment Sir Richard fell," Dr. Pender said, his hands clasped tightly around his worn notebook, "the grove seemed to hold its breath. Diana Ashley's scream shattered the silence, sharp and raw, as if the goddess she portrayed had been struck herself. The lantern swayed in the guests' trembling hands, casting jagged beams across the clearing. We surged forward, a chaotic cluster of costumes, Cleopatra's gilded asp glinting, the pirate's jeweled eye patch catching the light, my own monk's robes tangling underfoot. Sir Richard lay crumpled at the foot of the stone summer-house, his velvet cloak splayed like dark wings. Joyce Lempriere, her artist's eyes wide with horror, leaned forward. Was he truly dead, Dr. Pender? Right there, in that moment? No chance it was a feint? A jest? Dr. Pender shook his head, his expression grim. No jest, Miss Lempriere. I knelt beside him, my hands shaking as I searched for a pulse. His skin was already cooling, his eyes staring blankly at the moon. The blood, so much blood, pooled beneath him, soaking the grass. It came from his chest, a wound so precise it seemed almost surgical. But there was no weapon, no blade, no sign of what had struck him. The guests around me gasped, some weeping, others frozen in shock. Diana stood rooted, her crimson gown stark against the pale stone, her face a mask of disbelief. Sir Henry Clithering, his Scotland Yard instinct stirring, tapped a finger against his chin. A wound to the chest, you say, but no weapon found. That's a puzzle in itself. Did anyone search the grove, the summer-house? Immediately, Dr. Pender replied. Elliot Haydon, Sir Richard's cousin, was the first to act. He tore off his highwayman's mask, his face pale but resolute, and began barking orders. "Search the clearing," he shouted. "No one leaves until we find it." The guests fanned out, lanterns bobbing like fireflies. We scoured the grass, the shadows, even the crevices of the summer-house's ancient stones. I recall Clara Vane, the shepherdess, clutching her ribboned crook as she peered into the darkness, her voice trembling as she muttered about curses. But we found nothing. No knife, no dagger, not even a sharpened stick. Dolly Bantry shivered, pulling her shawl tighter. Nothing at all? Oh, Dr. Pender, it's too dreadful. It's as if the goddess herself reached out and struck him down. Raymond snorted, his skepticism cutting through the tension. A goddess. Really, Mrs. Bantry? You sound like a village gossip. There must have been a human hand behind it. Someone slipped away, hid the weapon, or, well, what did the police make of it? Dr. Pender's gaze grew distant, as if reliving the days that followed. The police arrived at dawn, summoned by a breathless footman who'd run to the village. They were a local lot, led by an Inspector Druitt, a man with a bulldog's tenacity but little imagination. They cordoned off the grove, questioned every guest, and searched the manor from cellar to attic. I can still see them tramping through the yews, their lanterns casting long shadows, their faces grim. They examined Sir Richard's body, clad in that velvet cloak, now ruined, and confirmed the wound was from a thin blade, likely a stiletto, but the weapon was nowhere to be found. Not in the grove, not in the manor, not even in the pond beyond the gardens, which they dragged at Eliot's insistence. Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked softly, a steady rhythm against the rising unease. "A stiletto," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the fire's crackle. "A weapon easily concealed, perhaps. And the guests, Dr. Pender, how did they react to this scrutiny?" Dr. Pender sighed, rubbing his temples. "They were a mixed lot, Miss Marple. Diana Ashley was inconsolable at first, weeping in the drawing-room as the police questioned her. She claimed she had seen nothing, only Sir Richard's sudden fall during her performance. Yet there was a brittleness to her grief, a theatrical edge that made me wonder. Eliot was stoic, answering the inspector's questions with clipped precision, though his eyes kept straying to Diana. Clara Vane, the shepherdess, was nervous, twisting her ribbons as she spoke of the grove's eerie atmosphere. The others, the Roman centurion, the pirate, the knight, were indignant, insisting they had been too far away to see anything clearly. Sir Henry leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "And their positions, can you recall where everyone stood when Sir Richard fell?" Dr. Pender frowned, his fingers tracing the edge of his notebook. "It's hazy, Sir Henry, but I'll try. Diana was in the center of the clearing, spinning in her dance. Sir Richard was closest to her, perhaps 3 feet away, near the summer house. The rest of us formed a loose circle, myself, Clara, the centurion, and the others, spread out at varying distances. Eliot was on the edge, half in shadow, his cloak blending with the yews. The lanterns made it hard to see clearly. Their light flickered, and the shadows danced with Diana's movements. It was chaos after he fell. No one could swear to anyone else's exact position." Joyce clapped her hands again, her voice bright with excitement. "It's like a painting gone wrong, all light and shadow, no clear lines. But surely someone saw something, a glint of metal, a movement?" "Nothing," Dr. Pender said flatly. "That was the horror of it. The police pressed us all, but every account aligned. No one had approached Sir Richard, no one had seen a weapon. Inspector Druitt even suggested Sir Richard might have stabbed himself, but there was no blade in his hands, and the angle of the wound made it impossible. The coroner's inquest returned a verdict of murder by person or persons unknown, but the village had other ideas. They whispered of Astarte's curse, of a goddess avenging some forgotten slight." Dolly Bantry's eyes widened. "A curse! Oh, how thrillingly ghastly! Did you believe it, Dr. Pender? Even a little?" Dr. Pender hesitated, his gaze flickering to the fire. "I'm a man of faith, Mrs. Bantry, but not of superstition. But standing in that grove, with the yews looming and the summer house staring down like a silent judge, I felt something, a weight, a presence. I don't believe in curses, but I understand why others did. The mystery was too perfect, too impossible." Raymond leaned back, his arms crossed. "Impossible? Hardly. Someone was clever enough to hide a weapon and a motive. What about this Diana? She was closest, wasn't she? And all that goddess nonsense. Perfect cover for a distraction." Sir Henry nodded thoughtfully. "A distraction, indeed. A theatrical performance, a crowded clearing, flickering lanterns. It's a stage set for murder. But the absence of the weapon troubles me. Dr. Pender, was the grove searched again later?" "Several times," Dr. Pender replied. "The police returned with dogs, even dug up parts of the clearing. They found nothing but roots and stones. The summer house was empty, its carvings untouched. The mystery consumed the village for weeks, then faded into legend. Sir Richard's death became the Astarte murder, a tale to frighten children." Miss Marple set her knitting in her lap, her eyes bright behind her spectacles. "A legend, perhaps, but legends often hide truths. Tell me, Dr. Pender, did Diana Ashley remain at the manor after the inquest?" Dr. Pender nodded. "For a time. She was distraught, or seemed so, and stayed on as Elliot's guest. There were rumors, unconfirmed, that she and Elliot grew closer in the months that followed. But I left for my studies soon after, and the manor passed to Elliot. I never saw Diana again." The room fell silent, the fire's glow softening the edges of the mystery. Joyce broke the quiet, her voice eager. "Well, Miss Marple, what do you make of it? A murder with no weapon, no witnesses. Surely you've a theory." Raymond chuckled. "Oh, come now, Joyce. Aunt Jane's clever, but even she can't unravel a ghost story. It's probably some trick of the light or a hidden trap in the summer house." Dolly Bantry gasped. "A trap? Oh, that's too clever, Raymond." Sir Henry raised a hand, his tone calm but authoritative. "Let's not leap to traps or ghosts. Miss Marple, you've been awfully quiet. What's stirring in that sharp mind of yours?" Miss Marple smiled, her expression serene, but her eyes alight with interest. "Only a few thoughts, Sir Henry."
Chapter 4. Miss Marple's Musings. The fire in Miss Marple's drawing room glowed steadily, its warm light a stark contrast to the chilling mystery that hung over the Tuesday night club. Dr. Pender's tale of Sir Richard Haydon's death in the grove of Astarte, an impossible murder with no weapon, no witnesses, and whispers of a goddess's curse, had left the group in a state of rapt fascination. Raymond West, Joyce Lempriere, Sir Henry Clithering, Dolly Bantry, and Miss Marple sat in a circle of anticipation, their teacups long since abandoned. The silence that followed Dr. Pender's account was thick, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire and the faint click of Miss Marple's knitting needles, which had resumed their rhythmic dance. Joyce Lempriere, her dark curls bouncing with enthusiasm, was the first to speak, her voice a mix of excitement and frustration. "It's maddening, Dr. Pender. A man stabbed in a crowded clearing, yet no one saw a thing. No knife, no suspect, just shadows and that dreadful grove. Surely someone has a theory. Miss Marple, you've been far too quiet. What do you make of this puzzle?" Raymond West, lounging on the sofa with his poet's scarf askew, chuckled. "Oh, Joyce, don't pin your hopes on Aunt Jane. She's clever with village gossip, but this is a proper mystery, ghosts and goddesses and all. I say it's a case of mass hysteria. The guests were drunk on champagne and Diana's theatrics, and someone slipped a blade into Sir Richard during the chaos." Dolly Bantry clapped her hands, her round face alight with intrigue. "Hysteria? Oh, Raymond, that's deliciously dramatic. But who? That brooding cousin, Elliot, perhaps? He sounds like the sort to hold a grudge." Sir Henry Clithering, his Scotland Yard instincts honed by years of unraveling crimes, leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Mass hysteria doesn't leave a stiletto wound, Mr. West, and the absence of the weapon is the crux of it. Dr. Pender, you're certain the police found nothing, not even a trace in the grove or the manor?" Dr. Pender nodded, his white hair catching the firelight. "Nothing, Sir Henry. The police were thorough. Inspector Druitt turned the estate upside down. They searched the yews, the summer house, even the guests' belongings. I remember watching them sift through the grass, their lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps. The mystery consumed them, but they had no answers." Miss Marple set her knitting in her lap, her eyes bright behind her spectacles. "A most perplexing case, Dr. Pender. A man dead, a wound clear as day, yet no weapon and no witness? It reminds me of a curious incident in St. Mary Mead years ago, when Mrs. Hargreaves lost her silver brooch at the church fete. Everyone swore they'd seen nothing, but it was there all along, hidden in plain sight. Raymond snorted, though his tone was affectionate. "A brooch, Aunt Jane? Really, we're talking murder, not a village trinket hunt. Surely you don't mean to compare the two?" Miss Marple's smile was serene, but her gaze was sharp. "Oh, Raymond, you'd be surprised how often the small things illuminate the large. Mrs. Hargreaves' brooch was pinned to her shawl, you see, but no one noticed because they were all distracted by young Tommy Pierce juggling apples. Distraction, I find, is often the key to mischief." Joyce's eyes widened, her artist imagination sparked. "Distraction? You mean Diana's performance? The dance, the chanting? It was all a ruse to hide the murder?" Miss Marple tilted her head, neither confirming nor denying. "Let us consider the scene, shall we? Dr. Pender, you described a clearing lit by lanterns, with shadows dancing as Diana spun in her gown. The guests were scattered, some closer, some farther. Sir Richard was nearest to her, you said, and Elliot lingered at the edge. But tell me, what was Diana wearing precisely? Her costume, it must have been elaborate to embody a goddess." Dr. Pender frowned, his fingers tracing the edge of his notebook as he recalled the details. "It was striking, Miss Marple. A gown of crimson silk, embroidered with gold threads that shimmered like flames. It flowed around her, long and loose, with sleeves that draped almost to the ground. Her headdress was silver, adorned with stars, and she wore a sash, golden, I think, tied loosely at her waist. She moved like a vision, and every eye was on her." Miss Marple nodded, her expression thoughtful. "A flowing gown, a sash, a headdress, plenty of fabric to catch the eye, and perhaps to conceal something else. And the lanterns, Dr. Pender, how did they affect the scene?" "They flickered," Dr. Pender replied, his brow furrowing. "The light was uneven, casting shadows that moved with Diana's dance. It was hard to see clearly, especially at the edges of the clearing. The yews seemed to swallow the light, and the summer-house loomed dark behind her." Sir Henry leaned forward, his detective's mind catching the thread. "Shadows and flickering light, a perfect stage for sleight of hand. Miss Marple, are you suggesting the murder happened in plain sight, hidden by the performance?" Miss Marple's needles resumed their clicking, a steady counterpoint to the rising tension. "I suggest nothing yet, Sir Henry, but I find it curious that so much depended on what was not seen. A crowded clearing, yet no one saw the fatal act. It reminds me of old Mrs. Cleary, who swore her purse was stolen at the market, when really it was tucked under her basket, overlooked in the bustle. Things are often closer than we think." Dolly Bantry gasped, her hands fluttering. "You mean the knife was there all along? But where? They searched everywhere." Raymond rolled his eyes, though his curiosity was piqued. "Aunt Jane, you're being cryptic. If the knife was hidden, where did it go? The police weren't fools. They'd have found it in a gown or a sash." Miss Marple's smile was patient. "Perhaps, Raymond, but a clever person knows how to use distraction. Dr. Pender, you mentioned Diana's scream when Sir Richard fell. What did she do next? Did she stay by his side or move away?" Dr. Pender's eyes narrowed as he sifted through the memory. "She screamed, then stepped back, clutching her gown as if to steady herself. The guests rushed forward, crowding around Sir Richard. Diana was pushed to the edge of the circle, near the summer-house. I remember her standing there, her face pale, her hands twisting the golden sash. She seemed shaken, but controlled somehow." Miss Marple nodded, her gaze distant. "Controlled, yes, that's interesting. And the other guests? Clara Vane, for instance, you said she was uneasy before the murder. Did she say anything after?" Dr. Pender hesitated, his fingers tightening on his notebook. "She was distraught. She kept muttering about the grove, saying it was wrong to play at rituals. I heard her tell the inspector she'd felt a chill, as if something watched from the summer-house,
but she insisted she saw no one approach Sir Richard. No one did. Joyce clapped her hands, her voice bubbling with excitement. A chill! Oh, Miss Marple, do you think Clara knew something? Or was she just spooked by the goddess nonsense? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. People often sense more than they can articulate, Miss Lempriere. Clara's unease may be significant, or it may be the Grove's atmosphere playing tricks. Dr. Pender, one more question, if I may. When the guests searched the clearing, did anyone examine Diana's costume? Dr. Pender blinked, surprised. Her costume? No, I don't believe so. The police questioned her, of course, but she was a lady of some prominence. They wouldn't have searched her person without cause. And after the initial chaos, she retired to the manor, still in her gown. The search focused on the Grove and the summer house. Miss Marple nodded, her expression serene, but her mind clearly racing. A gown, a sash, a moment of chaos. It's a small thing, perhaps, but small things can hide great truths. In St. Mary Mead, when young Betsy lost her locket, it was found in the hem of her skirt, where she'd tucked it for safekeeping. Distraction and concealment go hand in hand. Sir Henry chuckled, his admiration evident. You're building a case, Miss Marple. You think the answer lies with Diana's performance, the dance, the costume, some trick to hide the act? Miss Marple's smile was enigmatic. I think, Sir Henry, that human nature is rarely as mysterious as a goddess's curse. But let us not rush. Dr. Pender's tale has given us much to ponder. Raymond leaned forward, his skepticism softened by curiosity. Come now, Aunt Jane, don't keep us in suspense. You've got a theory. Out with it. Dolly Bantry nodded eagerly. Yes, do tell us. Was it Diana, or Elliot with his brooding eyes, or someone entirely different? Miss Marple's needles clicked faster, her voice calm but firm. Theories are dangerous without facts, my dear, but I will say this. The answer to Sir Richard's death lies not in the shadows of the Grove, but in the light of Diana's dance. Her costume, her movements, her scream, they were the stage, and the stage hides the truth. The room fell silent, the fire's glow casting long shadows across the faces of the Tuesday night club. Dr. Pender leaned back, his expression a mix of awe and unease. You see much, Miss Marple. I wish you'd been there that night. Perhaps the mystery would not have lingered so long. Joyce clapped her hands again.
Chapter 5. The Veil of Astarte Falls. The fire in Miss Marple's drawing-room burned low, its embers casting a soft, flickering light over the Tuesday night club. The air was thick with anticipation, the mystery of Sir Richard Haydon's death in the Grove of Astarte hanging over the group like a storm cloud. Dr. Pender's tale, a man stabbed in a moonlit clearing with no weapon, no witnesses, and whispers of a goddess's curse, had captivated Raymond West, Joyce Lempriere, Sir Henry Clithering, Dolly Bantry, and Miss Marple herself. Now, as the silence stretched, all eyes turned to the elderly spinster, whose knitting needles lay still in her lap, her sharp eyes gleaming behind her spectacles. Joyce Lempriere broke the quiet, her voice bubbling with impatience. "Miss Marple, you can't leave us dangling. You've been hinting at answers all evening. Distractions, costumes, shadows. Tell us, who killed Sir Richard? Was it Diana Ashley, playing her goddess role too well?" Raymond West, his poet's scarf slightly askew, leaned forward with a skeptical grin. "Oh, come now, Joyce. Aunt Jane is clever, but this is a ghost story wrapped in a riddle. I say it was Elliot Haydon, jealous, brooding, and perfectly placed at the edge of the clearing to slip in and out unnoticed." Dolly Bantry clapped her hands, her round face alight with excitement. "Elliot! Yes, that makes sense. A spurned lover, lurking in the shadows. But where did the knife go? That's what stumps me." Sir Henry Clithering, his Scotland Yard experience lending weight to his words, raised a hand. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Miss Marple, you've been steering us towards Diana's performance. The gown, the sash, the dance. I suspect you've seen something we haven't. Care to enlighten us?" Miss Marple smiled, her expression serene, but her gaze piercing. "You're very kind, Sir Henry, to think an old lady like me might see something new. But it's not so much what I see as what I notice. In St. Mary Mead, I've learned that the simplest acts often hide the cleverest tricks. Dr. Pender's tale reminds me of Mrs. Finch, who once hid a stolen teapot in her market basket, covered by a shawl. No one looked twice because it was such an ordinary place to look." Raymond chuckled, though his curiosity was evident. "A teapot, Aunt Jane, really? We're talking murder, not village pilfering. Are you saying the knife was hidden in plain sight?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Precisely, Raymond. But let us go back to the grove, shall we? Dr. Pender, you've given us a vivid picture. A clearing lit by flickering lanterns, Diana Ashley dancing as Astarte, Sir Richard falling with a wound to his heart. No weapon was found despite searches. The police, the guests, even the dogs found nothing. And yet, I believe the answer was there all along, hidden not in the shadows, but in the light of Diana's performance." Dr. Pender leaned forward, his white hair catching the firelight. "You intrigue me, Miss Marple. What have I missed? I was there, and I saw nothing but chaos and blood." Miss Marple folded her hands, her voice calm but commanding. "Let us reconstruct the moment. Diana, in her crimson gown and golden sash, was the center of attention. Her dance, her chant, her headdress of silver stars, they drew every eye. Sir Richard stood closest, perhaps 3 feet away, near the summer-house. The other guests formed a loose circle, their lanterns casting unsteady light. Elliot was at the edge, Clara Vane was uneasy, and the rest were caught in the spell of the moment. When Sir Richard fell, Diana screamed, stepped back, and the guests rushed forward. Is that correct?" Dr. Pender nodded, his brow furrowed. "Yes, exactly. Her scream was what broke the trance. She stepped back, clutching her sash as we crowded around Sir Richard." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened. "Clutching her sash. A small detail, but an important one. Dr. Pender, you said her gown was flowing, with long sleeves and a sash tied loosely at her waist. Such a costume offers many places to conceal a small object. A stiletto, for instance. A thin blade, easily tucked into a fold of fabric or a hidden pocket." Sir Henry's eyes narrowed, his detective's mind racing. "You're suggesting Diana hid the knife in her costume. But the police searched the grove, the manor. Surely they'd have checked her gown later." Miss Marple shook her head gently. "Not necessarily, Sir Henry. You said yourself that Diana was a lady of prominence. The police, being cautious, likely didn't search her person immediately, especially in the chaos. And Dr. Pender mentioned she retired to the manor soon after, still in her costume. A clever woman could dispose of a small blade in that time, perhaps in a fire, or hidden in a place no one thought to check, like a seamstress's basket or a guest's luggage she had access to." Joyce gasped, her hands clasped. "A fire! Oh, that's brilliant! She could have slipped it into a hearth while everyone was distracted. But why? Why would Diana kill Sir Richard?" Miss Marple's expression grew solemn. "Motive is often the heart of a crime, Miss Lempriere. Let us consider Diana Ashley, a woman of beauty and ambition, admired by many, but caught between 2 men, Sir Richard, the charming suitor, and Elliot, the intense rival. Dr. Pender, you mentioned rumors that Sir Richard planned to propose that weekend. Such a proposal might have been a triumph for Diana, but it might have also been a cage. A woman like her, used to commanding attention, might not welcome being tied to one man, especially if her heart or her plans lay somewhere else." Dr. Pender's eyes widened, his voice soft. "You think she killed him to avoid marriage? But Elliot, he was devoted to her too. Why not just choose him?" Miss Marple's smile was knowing.
Human nature is rarely so simple, Dr. Pender. In St. Mary Mead, I once knew a young woman, Lucy Trent, who broke 2 engagements in a single summer. She didn't want either man, she wanted the freedom to choose her own path. Diana, I suspect, was similar. Sir Richard's proposal might have threatened her independence, or perhaps there was another motive, money, jealousy, or a secret we'll never know, but the act itself was simple. During her dance, she moved close to Sir Richard, her gown swirling to hide her hands. A quick thrust with a hidden stiletto, then the blade tucked back into her sash or a hidden sleeve. Her scream drew attention, and in the chaos she stepped back, letting the guests rush, conceal her movements. Raymond leaned forward, his skepticism fading. But the knife, Aunt Jane, they searched everywhere. You're saying she carried it out of the grove? Miss Marple nodded. I believe so. A stiletto was small, easily hidden in a loose sash or a fold of fabric. Diana was an actress, skilled at commanding a scene. Her scream, her retreat to the edge of the clearing, it was all part of the performance. By the time the police arrived, the knife was likely gone, burned, buried, or hidden in a place no one thought to check, like a seamstress's basket or a guest's luggage she had access to. Sir Henry stroked his chin, his admiration evident. A bold theory, Miss Marple. It explains the lack of a weapon, and the witnesses' confusion. The flickering lanterns, the swirling gown, it's a perfect sleight of hand. But what of Elliot? His rivalry with Sir Richard was clear. Could he have been involved? Miss Marple's eyes softened, Sir Henry. It's possible, but I think not. Elliot's brooding nature made him a suspect, but his actions, organizing the search, staying close to Diana afterward, suggest he was shocked as the rest. Diana, however, had the means and the opportunity. Her costume was the key, and her performance the veil that hid the truth. Dolly Bantry clapped her hands, her voice trembling with excitement. "Oh, Miss Marple, you've done it! It's Diana, isn't it? She played the goddess and stabbed poor Sir Richard. But how can we be sure?" Miss Marple's smile was gentle but firm. "We can never be certain, Mrs. Bantry, not without a confession, but the piece is fit. The grove's mystique, the whispers of a curse, they were distractions, much like Diana's dance. In St. Mary Mead, I've seen how people hide their deeds behind a flurry of activity. Diana used her role as Astarte to create a moment of chaos, and in that moment she struck." Dr. Pender leaned back, his expression a mix of awe and relief. "Extraordinary, Miss Marple. Your theory aligns with a suspicion I buried long ago. After the inquest, there were whispers about Diana's grief, how it seemed too perfect, too staged, and her closeness to Elliot afterward. It troubled me. I never spoke of it, but you've brought it to light." Joyce's eyes sparkled, her voice eager. "It's like a play, isn't it? Diana is the villain, the grove is her stage. Oh, Miss Marple, you're a genius." Raymond shook his head, though his grin was wide. "I'll be damned, Aunt Jane. You've turned a ghost story into a village intrigue. I suppose I'll never doubt your knitting again." Sir Henry